You know, there are multiple ways how we can approach production lines in Satisfactory, and probably the most basic part of Satisfactory is production of various ingots. Once you get to Blueprint Designer, you can cut multiple corners and automate your construction time. Just placing smelter production chunks in 2 dimensions is the most obvious gamer optimization we can make in Satisfactory. But there are always more industrious people, or maybe just straight up engineers, who will exploit maximum from the Blueprint Designer, and they will make very compact 3-dimensional blueprint smelters. They work fine, but they often lack exterior and any level of flexibility. They are great for the endgame and maxed out pure nodes, but they are not so great at everything else. And today, I want to showcase and share more of an architectural approach. Where we not only implement fully fledged exteriors into our smelters, but we also make them modular in nature. This will allow to cover every stage of game progression and also cover various sizes of resource nodes. Also, I would cover blueprints for pure recipe refineries and alloy recipes for foundries. So it is not only modular smelters, but way more. And accounting for different stages of progression and for different sizes of resource nodes while maintaining minimal amount of blueprints, well, it is a puzzle in its own. And as usual, I will share my blueprints for free. Because, well, paywalling something that 12-year-old can make is freaking cringe, man. And without further ado, let's check out the first factory. The most interesting issue is an issue of miners, and my main approach for this project was incorporation of miners into factory design. For example, with my blueprint-only playthrough, I had all those beautiful factories, but I totally failed to make anything out of my miners. It just looks bad, or better yet, it looks like I'm still playing Update 3. This needs to change. There is no real benefit for smelting ingots on the site or transporting raw ore for production of goods. In majority of cases, it's still 1-to-1 conversion rate. But in any case, just building smelter facility on top of miner cover allow for more variation in the design, which is exactly what I am going for. So in simple terms, I will just be covering up the miners and just building the factory on top of that. And first, we need to account for 3 progression stages and 3 sizes of resource nodes. When you unlock blueprints, you will have Mark III belts, and shortly after, you will access Mark IV, and way later, you will get to Mark V. Those belt thresholds are 270, 480 and 780 items per minute. At the same time, resource nodes with progression of miners from Mark II to Mark III will have the following maximum outputs: 150 and 300 for impure nodes, 300 and 600 for normal nodes, and 600 or 780 for pure nodes. And the most common ground between those realms of miners and belts would be 240 items per minute. Not the perfect ratio, but the ratio that works with every stage and size. It fits exactly twice on the Mark IV and 3 times on the Mark V belt. This is a very convenient ratio, and this is how I made my first iteration of modular smelters, but it was not the final iteration by any means. So I am just making a cover for miner with 3 outputs and 3 inputs. Also, I'm using splitter to split anything going out from the miner into Mark III belts. It just dumped down the module to only Mark III logistics and making the modular system usable just starting on the most early stage of progression. Over here, I have pretty much identical modules with partially exposed sandwich layers. I'm playing around with Brutalist design, and those triangle star destroyer windows, well, they are just too perfect for the scale of this building. Then I use 3 different blueprints for every level of progression or node purity, and the only difference is input and output outlets to line up with different outlets down below in the base miner cover. But there are several issues with this approach. First issue is total number of blueprints to make one single factory. Having 3 different modules for every resource type is just overkill in UI and usability department. Second issue is only relevant for the late game when you can reach the pinnacle of production. For example, you will be only using 720 ore from possible 780. This is not so great, and I was thinking about making different production rate for the final blueprint C. But then I just went for more of an universal approach. Where I decided to increase the individual production rate of each module to 260 ingots per minute. This would be a bit inefficient with Mark II miners and Mark IV logistics, still capping at 480 items per minute, but this way it still fits into Mark III belts connecting everything to the base, and it covers the latest stage with 3 levels hitting 780 items per minute. Then I went to make
Streamlined universal design.
and I basically just eliminated all 3 variations, just making one universal module. And with the simple overflow mechanic, it will find the way to production line and output. Just remember, have one connection for in and one connection for out. That's it. And once again, this is all done in such a way that you can start using this system with Mark III belts and only later upgrade it to Mark IV or Mark V. This is pretty much the only reason for initial miner split over making built-in vertical manifolds. This approach works well with the copper and iron, but at the same time, well, in the copper case, I want to have an option for more efficient layout by using alloy recipes. With copper alloy recipe, we can just extract way beyond than 780 ingots from fully stacked pure node, but this requires input of extra line of iron ore. This alone doubles the amount of intake outlets for every module, and this forced me to make some minor alterations in the exterior design, in particular just making more room for the outlets. And I sort of kept production of every module to 480 copper ingots per minute. This way I only have to deal with Mark IV belts on the outs, and well, the obvious downside is utilization of only 720 copper from 780 copper available on the pure nodes. Yeah, this is that, but whatever, you cannot be efficient everywhere. I do keep the design variations, unlike with the simpler smelters, making different blueprints with letters A, B and C, and the reason for this is both visual and functional. With 3 different blueprints, you cannot just mishmash iron and copper nodes, because well, if you mishmash those, well, you can clog up the production. I'm using 4 overclock foundries per level, and they need 120 iron ore per pop. And this layout is also kind of translates nicely into the coal and steel production. Only wacky difference here is production ratios, where we just need to work with existing iron smelters in mind. Iron smelters produce 260 iron ingots per level, and this dictates production ratio of 390 steel ingots per level with solid steel ingot recipe. Why is that? Well, because we can just exploit maximum out of our coal nodes. And also 260 kinda divides equally by 130, which is input for every single level of steel ingots. Nice. And once again, just like with the copper, output will fit nicely into the Mark IV belts. Also, quick note on my, well, extra design touches with those smelter factories. This is basically visual only representation of the drill rig. Yeah, quite similar to something that you can find and see in real life with the oil rigs. And I know this is not oil, this is not even a fluid, but honestly, like, who cares? And without some extra decorations, those like brutalist factories all together in the field, well, they just look boring and dull, so let's make something interesting. And as usual, I want to have some variety, so I'm making version with a smokestack decoration. And for the concrete factory that I also have done, because it's quite modular, just like a simple smelters, well, just make them, you know, why not? For those, I'm making actually decoration in the form of the concrete bunkers, which is kind of awesome. It's kind of fitting together, you know, yeah, kind of visual and functional, yeah. Very interesting modular puzzle are the pure recipes. I do not bother with things like pure copper or pure iron for, well, various reasons. But when it comes to the quartz and Caterium, I do like to use pure recipes for extra efficiency. After all, it is relatively easy to run out of those in the late game, and also those resources I kind of spread out on the map, so sometimes making extra logistics just to get there, just not worth the time when you can have just extra efficiency. But the main challenge here is the footprint of refineries. I was totally able to make the quartz refinery in 3 universal modules, and well, I have the 3 lifts in and 3 lifts out, and with the water pipe it's just, well, in straight up middle. Each module is up exactly 260 quartz, which is familiar ratio, and it also produces 210 pure quartz per minute. And the only difference from the more compact smelters is the scale of the building. These have the downsides. We need just to extend our conveyor lifts because they are just too short. For this I just make conveyor floor holes as extension stops, and I just skip over the omnidirectional inputs and outputs until I reach the desired blueprint outlet. Quite simple, but well, still needs to be made. And just as previously with the simple smelters, these blueprints have omnidirectional input and output. You just need to connect one one outlet with minor cover blueprint, and the rest is sorted by internal load balancing. For the design I'm rocking with the Art Deco motifs because, well, why not? And I have already explored them in one of my previous videos on this channel. But like beer but not but or whatever, but this was an easy one. You know, we have an interesting challenge to make Caterium Refinery, and whatever you do, you can just make 3 blueprints for maximum production of, well, Caterium. I was able to split maximum conversion of 780 Caterium ore into 6 blueprints producing 65 Caterium ingots each. But then we need to make a total of 6 connection lines for input and output, and at first I wanted to make connections on the 2 opposite sides with 2 different blueprints, but then I decided like to be a bit more clever with my clever approach. And you know what? There'll be a total of 1 single blueprint variation. Yes, only one, but we will need to host the vertical manifold. So you can just extend raw ore from one blueprint to next, just have the vertical manifold there, same goes for the outputs, and I'm still going for 3 pairs and 3 connections. So in a sense, well, they are just paired, like 6 blueprints, but actually it's only like 3 pairs with 3 connections. So it works with, well, 780 items, so it's like 3 times 260 Caterium ore. It works with Mark III logistics, you know, it's kinda great, like all-rounder. Every single blueprint consumes 130 ore and the same amount of water, and the water is the only issue here. We cannot really fit all the water for 6 modules into single Mark II pipe, so we need to use 2 pipes. Yeah, why not? But then you will need to use 2 different modules, 2 different blueprints for, well, 2 different pipes. And this is not great. Otherwise you will need to use the internal connections, internal setups. That's not gonna fly. I want 1 module, universal setup. So what I'm doing here, we are not using full capacity in both pipes, and we have quite the room for the wiggle and slosh. In every module I just split both pipes, limited by valve with 130 value. This way any pipe can support full module. Then I just connect both limited pipes into one, and due to water pressure, connecting volumes, fluids, slosh, pumps, blah blah blah.
Too smart for me to explain, well, everything just works.
And the only reason it works is because, well, we have like 30% of the pipe throughput being unused. Right, maximum capacity probably will not work without some extra calibration, but you know, this is not the case here, it just works like that, so whatever, I will jam with it. Alright, so in the end of the day, we already have basic smelters for iron and copper alongside with modular concrete factory, then we have foundry setups for copper and steel, and finally we achieved pure refinery setups for quartz and Caterium. There are still some resources to tackle like aluminium and sulfur, but it is a story for next time. So pin comment down below, have a link for the blueprints. If you never exported blueprints, you will need to do this manually. You need to go to your system disk, users, your username, app data, local, factory game, saved, save games, blueprints. There your game session would create a folder once you have blueprints unlocked in your progression and have created first blueprint. Every blueprint consists from 2 parts, .sbp file with parts and items and .sbp cfg file with text description and color settings. Quick note that my blueprints are done in update 8 experimental and they will crash on older version of Satisfactory. These were different ways to make modular refineries and smelters in Satisfactory. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure to check every engagement module under this video, and until the next time, have a nice one, and Yakis out.